Dilupa, thank you very much for joining us here on AU Manufacturing Conversations. It's very nice to finally have you on the program.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. So let's get started. We know each other a tiny bit, but many in the audience will know you even less than that. So I think it's probably a good idea to get started by you just telling us a little bit about your career path, your current role, and some of the research you're currently involved in, please.
I'm an associate professor of management at the School of Business, Western Sydney University, and I'm also the associate dean for graduate studies of the school. My academic career started in 2007. Before that, I was in the industry and I held various responsibilities at IBM World Trade Corporation, Sri Lanka branch. It was a great career start for me. I was the first female engineer at IBM Sri Lanka office. I had fantastic opportunities to be involved in many different functions, including technology solution designing, managing delivery of various technological projects, and also engaging in technical services. And I also led the business continuity and recovery services product portfolio at the time. So it gave me the first-hand experience in the technology transfer process from the technology supplier's perspective. Anyway, I always had the desire to pursue intellectually challenging work. So I completed my PhD at WSU in 2011, and then I continued as an academic at WSU since then. My current research focus is driven by my multidisciplinary exposure and skill sets. So they are mainly in supply chain management and technology management areas. I specifically focus on SMEs, and it's my research interest to develop outputs that are adoptable by SMEs.
So let's turn to that, I guess, that strange little world of Australian SMEs that we both love. How did you end up focusing so much on SME manufacturers in this country? What, I guess, drew you towards that community?
I have always been around engineering and manufacturing most of my life. My father worked in a large sugar production factory in Sri Lanka. So as a kid, I had fascinating discussions about production floor problems and how my father, his friends, and his teammates approached those problems using the limited resources available to them at the time. And I'm an electrical and electronic engineer by training, and my time in industry, I worked with several manufacturing companies as a technology solutions provider. And with my professional networks in engineering, I kept my connections with the manufacturing companies. And I'm particularly interested in investigating why some countries, like Korea, Taiwan, and China benefited from foreign investments and developed technological advancements, where some other countries were stuck with low value added production in manufacturing. So in my PhD, I focused on the Sri Lankan manufacturing industry, and I conducted a firm level study to investigate how technologically advanced and successful companies operating in the global value chain acquired technologies and developed innovation capabilities with time. And I found that the power dynamics between the global value chain partners and local suppliers, they change over time when the technology and knowledge gap reduce. So because of my strong interest in manufacturing and my exposure and experience in that, and my passion for creating knowledge and outputs useful for SMEs, I think focusing on manufacturing SMEs in Australia, in my research, is a natural progression for me.
Right. And so we're speaking because you have a paper that's just freshly released through the James Martin Institute. Could you please tell me a little bit about your work for that institute, your fellowship, and the paper and the brief you were given, I guess? Sorry, that's a bunch of questions, but however you want to approach what I've just said is up to you, and I'm sure you do a good job.
Thank you, Brad. Sure. The Policy Insights paper that was recently released is an output of my research as part of my fellowship at the James Martin Institute. For those who may not be familiar with JMI, it is a partnership between the New South Wales government and Australian universities, and they attempt to assist researchers in harnessing research findings to inform policymaking. So my proposal to JMI was to investigate the challenges faced by manufacturing SMEs in technology adoption, and it was accepted by JMI. And I was appointed as the inaugural policy fellow at JMI, and that acceptance of the proposal, in a way, shows the recognition of the challenges faced by manufacturing SMEs and the need for generating evidence-based policy options and things progress from there. That's how it happened.
So, broadly speaking, what are some of the barriers that you have identified? I'm sure that some of them will be familiar, others perhaps not so much to our community. Tell me about some of what you found out, please.
Barriers to technology adoption are multidimensional. Technology adoption requires significant financial investment, as we know, and many companies have limited financial resources. And some even find external financing inaccessible for them. So these costs are not only the initial investments, but also training, skill acquisition, and maintenance costs considering the technology lifecycle. Another significant barrier is the lack of knowledge of business leaders and managers about these technologies and the benefits they can bring to their own operations. And also, many businesses struggle to access advanced technological skills, especially manufacturing companies struggles to attract tech-savvy youth workforce. Also, looking at the technological barriers, they are caused by the low level of technology and the lack of compatibility leading to technological integration issues. And as we know, the low level of standardization in the current processes of many SMEs cause integration issues too. And there are cultural challenges on the other side. Some lack innovation or digital culture or culture of experimentation. And there can also be resistance to change from the staff with the fear of potential job displacements, and some lack in even background knowledge of technologies to understand them and their effects on the operation. Data security issue is another factor where there's fear of losing data to external parties. So there are a series of barriers, but it is important to note that the impact of these different barriers can vary depending on the companies and also the type of technology is considered for adoption.
So it's a fair collection of issues, and anyone who wants more information can probably access your paper, which we'll make available in the show notes. A further question I'd like to ask is around your work and collecting data from manufacturers. What came through from that part of your research?
My research collaborators and I have conducted several studies that collected data from Australian companies. So in one of the studies, we conducted an online survey with Australian manufacturing companies and investigated how advanced technologies lead to resilience benefits. And we studied both operations and supply chain resilience and found evidence that advanced technologies directly affect supply chain resilience in surveyed manufacturing companies. From that research, we also found that the majority of companies we surveyed had conventional technologies such as RFID, ERP, or SCADA systems, but a more advanced technologies such as virtual commissioning or using AI for planning had limited adoption. So we also found evidence that innovative companies are more capable in drawing resilient benefits from their technological investments compared to non-innovative companies. And in another study with Australian companies, we found that managers need a strong confidence in the perceived benefits they receive from their technology investments. Companies have different operations and different levels of technology. So managers' intentions to adopt technologies increase when they know the specific technology solution bringing them specific benefits relevant for their own operation. And also we have done a few other projects with practitioners from manufacturing SMEs, and the findings will be published soon.
Keep an eye out for them, and I hope you'll give me an alert when they're available. So that's some of the barriers and some of the observations. Tell me about some of the potential ways to improve technology adoption by various policy responses. Let's look at two of the four policies that you've suggested. I think we'll go with knowledge exchange through industry secondment and a technology leasing program. Could you talk us through those two, please?
Sure. My recently published policy insights paper had four policy options, and all of those options are centered around the proposed SME-centric technology center. That center is to demonstrate advanced emerging technologies in a setting that represents SME environments. Now, the proposed industry secondment program is for temporary assignments of industry experts from large organizations to SMEs. It is proposed to stimulate knowledge exchange between large enterprises and SMEs and as a directed skill mobility program. So, as I said before, we have found evidence that enhancing the confidence of managers in advanced technologies is required to increase their intention to adopt them. The lack of confidence and readiness of SMEs to adopt advanced technologies are partly linked to their lack of skills, experience, and the lack of dedicated in-house personnel, and also the lack of access to external expertise. So the idea behind this proposed secondment program is to provide access to external experts with exposure to advanced technologies so they can contribute to increasing the absorptive capacity of SMEs and to dynamically respond to the rapidly changing technological environment. In practice, a government assistant model for industry secondment or sabbatical systems will encourage employers to release their technology experts to SMEs on a temporary basis. There are benefits for the large companies that are technologically more developed and also to the technology experts. For example, large companies can develop deeper insights into their supply chain operations if they introduce a secondment program with SMEs in their own supply chain. It also helps developing a domestic manufacturing base required for sustainable operations and increased resilience. During the pandemic, we witnessed the critical importance of having a strong upstream supply chain base locally. The other policy option is the technology leasing program. It is to reduce the risk of technology investments by SMEs by allowing them to access or trial out advanced technologies at a lower cost. Technology trials will develop their confidence in their own operations, and we know SMEs have limited financial resources, and many companies have shown increased risk-averse behavior after the pandemic. So, in practice, there are some commercial services available at the moment, and they provide technology on a leasing or renting basis. So, technology as a service is an innovative new business model for technology vendors. Such models reduce in-house infrastructure investment for companies. However, we know SMEs are challenged with affordability and the lack of technical in-house expertise. So my view here is that a government-backed lease guarantee program and support coming from the proposed SME-centric technology center can increase SMEs' access to advanced technologies.
That brings us to international examples, and you did draw on some of those in the paper. Are there any lessons from overseas, perhaps, that you think might be worth sharing through this conversation?
Yeah, one good example is the Liverpool City Region 4.0 program in the UK. It was recognized as UK-wide best practice in a couple of years ago. This program had government backing, and it involved universities, vocational education institutes, and also independent consultants. Reports on this program actually show that the program was successful, and they identify that the pilot program connected with 3,000 SMEs. That's quite a large number of SMEs. They engage with SMEs via on-site visits and with both business managers and technology managers. So there are lots of lessons that we can learn from such programs to start a pilot program here. And another example is the Korean Technology and Information Promotion Agency for SMEs, and they have a low-cost, high-efficiency, cloud-based platform where SMEs can access various technological solutions for free. And there are increasing number of industry sabbatical programs becoming popular in US companies. And managers or professionals from large organizations seem to be actively participating in such programs. So there are many examples from the international domain that we can learn lessons from.
Another topic I wanted to get your thoughts on is the topic of unnecessary jargon and buzzwords from vendors, especially when, they might not just be technical terms that are used by engineers, for example, but they're just sort of decorative and just stand in the way of what a person actually means. I could pull a handful out of my hat. If you've been to an expo, and listeners have, they can probably think of examples. Do you have a point of view when it comes to the lack of plain speaking, perhaps, on this subject when it comes from vendors and others, and what sort of barrier that might present to SMEs?
Yeah, I think unnecessary jargon and buzzwords are not helpful for any company. Their approach, especially SMEs' approach to technology, is problem-oriented as far as I know. Unlike large companies that may have a digital strategy or a mission drive in their technological investments, SMEs approach newer technologies to solve their problems in their own operations. So my view is that technologies should be presented as a solution for problems, and those solutions need to be customized to clients' own operations. SMEs usually do not have very standardized operations, so they require more involvement from vendors in understanding and developing solutions that are localized for the SMEs' own operational problems. That's my view.
And on a similar note, we've had Industry 4 as a concept for well over a decade, and more recently people have started to mention Industry 5, and that's become a standardized term. And though it's sort of, on a personal level, I think we probably don't need Industry 5 to add to the confusion. There's actually a standard definition for it and a standard set of principles to it, and it's not just made up by some vendor. But anyway, I've seen people saying things like Industry 6 and beyond, and industry this and that, when I think there's a lot of companies that basically haven't had the chance to authentically understand Industry 4 and to roll it out throughout their companies in various ways. What's your point of view on people saying things like Industry 5 and Industry 6 and just kind of making up things perhaps just to sound impressive, I guess?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I have had interesting discussions with my colleagues on this unprecedented rate of change of these concepts labeled as revolutions in recent times. Looking at history, previous industrial revolutions had a significant time gap of about 100 years. And the time gap between the fourth and the fifth industrial revolutions was less than 2 decades. So that creates a big disconnect between the terminology referred in the discourse and the real technology levels of companies. Companies, especially SMEs, take time to adapt and shift their thinking and behaviors. So they require market signals supporting their investments and external assistance as a stepping stone. So they require time to adapt with these changes. So currently, in my view, there's a disconnect between the discourse in the technological domain and the real technological levels in companies.
I've exhausted pretty much all of your time that I'd feel good about borrowing, and you've been generous with it, but I have to ask you a final question, and that is the standard final question we ask of our guests, and that's, what's one issue within manufacturing that isn't getting the attention it deserves in your view?
So I think while the general image of manufacturing has been changing over time from low-tech and bit dirty to clean and high-tech, it still has a significant skills shortage and struggles to attract the youth. So I think changing negative perceptions on manufacturing is a requirement to get the attention of the youth. Young people are attracted to having a career that involves technology. So I think increased technology adoption in manufacturing companies and using technology for improved efficiency, resilience, and sustainability performance can further improve the image of manufacturing and increase their ability to attract tech-savvy youth.
Dilupa, it's been fantastic speaking to you. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day and joining us on AU Manufacturing Conversations.
Thank you.